Righty. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. And we're going to be talking about optimizing omnichannel fulfillment through supply chain and e-commerce integration. Sarah Lyons, a partner marketing manager at DynamicWeb, is joining us, as well as Judy Vanderlinden is our moderator today. She'll likely stay silent. Thank you, Judy. And my name is Jeffrey Porter, Chief Marketing Officer at Stock IQ Technologies. So let's go ahead and get started and talk to you about what we're going to be doing today. So our agenda for today is we're going to be going over the DynamicWeb and Stock IQ partnership. We're going to be talking about leveraging e-commerce and supply chain planning solution to assist in better fulfillment. Sarah's also going to give us a nice view on defining your e-commerce vision. I think it's really important to start off. I've learned a lot from working with Sarah on really being clear on where you want to go. So she's going to spend some time with us on that. I'm going to be talking about planning and execution in the omnichannel along with Sarah. And then we're going to be talking about planning for an e-commerce ROI. So we have lots of years of experience working in this industry and can highlight where you would see opportunities. And then we'll get into Q&A following that as well. So with that, I'll let Sarah introduce herself.
Hey, good morning, guys. My name is Sarah Lyons. I'm the current partner marketing manager at DynamicWeb. A little bit about me is I really focus on alliance building and our partnership strategy through marketing here at DynamicWeb. And then kind of on like an interpersonal portion, I'm also an entrepreneur. My background is actually from the fashion industry, and I'm just really, really passionate about building, beautiful partnerships like we have today with Stock IQ.
Righty. Thank you, Sarah. Great to have you on board here. So let's see here, talking about unified omnichannel commerce platform. Sarah, if you want to just give us a little bit of an overview of what that is, and then I'll go into an introduction for myself.
Yeah, of course. So, e-commerce, when I would say maybe even a couple years ago, people had an assumption it was just, direct to retail or any sort of like Amazon experience. Even today, that's still kind of sort of the case, but it could be, not farther from the truth. You can have a B2B and B2C e-commerce platform. So we're kind of going to delve into that today about, how that even looks for companies, especially optimizing a supply chain software like yourself. And then, for the clients that might not want a traditional e-commerce, but rather they might want to have some sort of login portal for a sales automated process, we do offer portals directly integrated to your ERP through that. And then, you get into kind of the nitty gritty of your e-commerce platform. We do offer a product information management, otherwise known as a PIM system, that kind of really, segregates that data and helps you sort of, become more visible online. And also kind of from a more internal aspect, it adds a lot of good automation and data just to your everyday processes selling. Then we have a really, really easy to use, content management system. And then finally, and not least, the most important thing maybe some people sometimes miss is actually that email marketing with your platform. So all of this together is actually an all-in-one encompassing platform that DynamicWeb, proudly offers.
Outstanding. Thank you. Appreciate that, Sarah. So my name is Jeffrey Porter. I've spent about 30 years in the software and consulting and leadership. Thoroughly enjoy supply chain. Spent quite a number of years at Hewlett Packard, and then have been developing software for the mid-market here for, Christmas, 23, 24 years. I personally don't develop, but I have a fair bit of experience consulting with our clients, doing training, just really passionate about it. Deep experience. From a personal standpoint, you've probably seen here, passionate about hiking and skiing and cycling and anything outdoors. Fortunately to live here in Colorado, and that's my dog Cooper, who hopefully will not be joining us this morning. Alrighty, so Stock IQ, what's Stock IQ all about? Well, our focus is on making it easy for supply chain planning professionals to plan, forecast, and replenish inventory. So inside of our solution, it all starts with the demand forecast. We're really talking about lining up historical sales, promotions, other activities, e-commerce promotions we might have on the forward looking to create a demand plan. This is what we think we're going to be selling. We also associate in that inventory planning. The inventory planning will help us identify exactly how much inventory we should have to meet our goals and objectives as we're going out to those markets. We follow that up with our replenishment planning module. It might be in the form of a suggested purchase order coming from Our vendors are suppliers. It might be kitting activities where we're building to stock. It also might be transferring product one direction or another, and or if we're a manufacturer where we're launching manufacturing orders. As noted in here, we do have supplier and promotion planning. Promotion planning is a big part of what we're seeing with a lot of our folks in the e-commerce arena. What Stock IQ has the ability to do, in addition to the folks over at DynamicWeb, is we can monitor the historical performance of past activities, identify what lift we saw with different promotions that we're putting forward. Stock IQ takes that in addition to our suppliers' performance, to do a better job of planning moving forward. And then lastly, S&OP processes. This is called sales and operations planning. We have seen sales and operations planning become a very big component of a lot of our clients' processes. And essentially what it's doing, much like we're talking about an e-commerce fulfillment type of a strategy with DynamicWeb, Stock IQ is working internally in operations. There's two separate entities oftentimes that don't talk to each other without a formal process in place. So we're actually exemplifying a bit of, integrating into a sales and operations planning. So bringing in that external information on what we're going to be promoting so that we have the ability to make the right fulfillment for that is a big part of what we're focused on doing. So with that being said, let's jump into it. And Sarah, I'll let you jump directly into defining your e-commerce vision.
Yeah, of course. So, when people start going down like an e-commerce journey, right? I'm sure the companies that we're going to be talking directly to today, like they are not, they're not a small business looking to open an Etsy shop. That's not going to be something that is very, very easy and straightforward. Rather, if you are a multi-million-dollar company working with really high volume and high priced orders, you're going to have to look at that journey from a very holistic standpoint. And what I mean by that is you need to divide it up into both short-term and long-term goals, right? So for instance, a short-term goal would be, how do we directly get our current customers using like the software that we're about to be investing in? And then long-term is, okay, how do we scale it? How do we lead gen from that? So whenever I'm sitting down with clients, my main thing I always ask them to do first is, research your leading competitors. See if first, are they working on an e-commerce platform that is working for them? What I really like even doing is, creating an account on there, right? And kind of understanding the process that they're going through, right? Because you don't want to reinvent the wheel right now, right? You can go on and figure out, okay, I like the way that they onboard me as a customer. That seems very convenient. That's something that probably our customers would enjoy. I can take a look at order history there. That's probably something that's really beneficial for them. So researching and understanding kind of what the market is kind of looking for in terms of pages is really, really important when you take that first step. And then branding and content, right? So if you really want to develop that channel, and relying, when you're building your e-commerce, it's different than your other distribution channels, right? Because let's say if you're selling on Wayfair, you're relying on their branding and their content to push out your products. But if you want to start doing that on your own channel, that's going to be really, really important for when you want to, create that aesthetic, create that image in mind, right? Whenever you look at really big companies, let's say you talk about John Deere, that branding and that content is very crucial for keeping, a retention of customers. And then, another reason for defining your e-commerce vision is, omnichannel marketplaces. So just because you are developing your e-commerce, that can actually work in tangent with the other channels that you're utilizing, which is, I'm really excited to hear you guys even talk about that Stock IQ's omnichannel experience, right? Because if you're utilizing your e-commerce, how does that work in tangent? Your orders for Amazon, your orders for Home Depot. That's really, really important to leverage all that data. And then finally, are you a B2B company that might actually want to start offering B2C? Do you have those resources? Or do you already have a B2C concept and you want to actually combine those two platforms together depending on which customer is logging in? So altogether, this is kind of a good starting point for figuring out, okay, how do I want to scale that online channel?
Sarah, a question for you. When introducing a new channel, let's say somebody is embarking on going into an e-commerce, is this a 1 month activity, 3 months, 6 months? What can folks expect, when they go in and begin defining their vision and doing their research as you're suggesting?
I would definitely recommend it starting off at 6 months, right? Because with the amount of data, and we're going to also get into this right from both our ends, is we're utilizing that ERP data. How much data has your company accumulated for years, right? How do you want to properly reflect that out into, like the beginning of your stages? It's not going to be, let's say, oh, let's just move everything online, right? I'm not going to streamline that and not be transparent about that, because I want you to be set up for success. And that's going to take really serious planning from your team's part. But the ROI and the genuine return from that is going to far exceed, the I would say the time and discipline it takes to really make this succeed. Because at this point in the game, I think that especially with mid-market, there's Amazons popping up everywhere. And if you don't take this time to create, a really competitive edge against that, you might be falling behind when it comes to those niches, right?
Great. Thank you for that insight. All righty. So let's talk about leveraging e-commerce and supply chain planning. So what does the supply chain planning piece? So if we think internally and operationally from a company perspective, we as an organization need to be prepared to meet the demand and or the requirements coming from this e-commerce type channel. My own personal experience with e-commerce has been that there's lots of opportunities. You might be in a very competitive situation. Customers have the ability to very quickly go from one product to another. That's part of what the e-commerce is doing for them, giving them that ability to make choices. On the backside of the house and operationally, our goal and objective is to line up the inventory and the product in the right channels, be it an FBA type of fulfilled by Amazon, making sure that we have enough product there and available for them. So should those sales really start surging, that we can actually meet those demands. And I think you hit it right on the head, Sarah, when you talked about preparing for this so that you don't get behind. I know, depending on your ability to fulfill may impact your positioning, on pages and promotions and your e-commerce's partners' ability or desire to actually position you as well. So we as an operations on the back end are really here to help improve the order fulfillment and implement the customer's orders as fast as possible. A lot of times that takes time, especially when we have a really long lead time associated with procuring product. So we track the product selling. We do data analytics around ABC, ranking for cross-sell, upsell. So we're really taking a pretty holistic approach to not only the omni-channel sales or the e-commerce sales, but we're also looking at sales as they're getting ranked, maybe through a distribution fulfillment or direct to customer as well. So a lot of different things that we're doing and analyzing so that we have some analytics to determine what products we might want to begin promoting into that e-commerce channel. The other thing that we're doing, the other thing that we're doing in here really is increasing the automation. So for the omni-channel marketplace, a lot of data involved, and we've started engaging with different channels. So making sure that we can get the information as quick as possible. Just as an example, maybe we have a set of distribution facilities where customers are store facing, where we're positioning product. That product now, as we move into an e-commerce platform, might have 3 or 4 different channels that we can operate in. That's just increased the complexity and the number of SKUs that I need to begin managing. So with that being said, I think what we'll do is we'll drop into, and we're going to talking about the digital experience stack. And this is really speaking to what we need to do in order to prepare ourselves for that real rapid fulfillment. So one of the things to note in this diagram right in here, you will notice that Stock IQ is represented over on the left-hand side, DynamicWeb on the right, and then we have this real-time inventory data exchange that's going back and forth, and that's facilitated by the ERP system. So both of the platforms that we're talking about today rely on a common repository for this information. So from Stock IQ's perspective, I'll speak to this one, and then Sarah, I'll let you speak to the stack experience working within DynamicWeb. So from Stock IQ's perspective, we need information around our stocking levels. We need to know what's on hand at our distribution facilities. We need to know what's on hand at our fulfillment centers. It might be a 3PL, a 4PL. It might be another entity that's direct fulfilling. So for instance, like Fulfilled by Amazon, it's important for us to know what's on hand so that we can understand what's going on. Oftentimes, they have various portals that we can grab this information into. And I know a lot of today's ERP systems also have the ability to get that data real time. The other thing that Stock IQ is interested in understanding too is the revenue logistics around how we go about planning where that inventory is positioned. So for instance, do we need to be stocking that at a DC? Does it need to be at a more forward fulfillment type of an area? We're also doing the forecasting, as we mentioned, that demand planning. So this is all about saying, historically, what have we sold? We can leverage this information for understanding what we think we're going to be selling in the future. Now, when we talk about forecasting in an omni-channel type of a world, we're really talking about, I might have a SKU that's selling in through Wayfair, through Amazon. Maybe I have my own digital experience here set up within my company. And maybe I have DCs or other arenas where customers can buy. So when we're talking about forecasting, we're talking about forecasting each one of those individual channels because they might have a very, very different experience. We might be doing promotions in one of those channels and not another. So the forecasting really gets to a very discrete level, gets down into the individual product level. We're then talking about product ranking. Product ranking is all about understanding what inventory we're carrying. So it's important to understand what are the important items within our mix. So when we start talking about product ranking, what we're saying is, hey, if we look at everything that we have to offer, what is producing the most revenue? What do we sell the most of? What's generating the most margin, et cetera? So a lot of different criteria so that when we look at an item, they're not all treated equally. Obviously, if we have a very important item, we want to make sure that our service levels are up there. We're making sure we're not out of stock on those that our customers are interested in. The other thing that we're doing is integrating service levels. So this is that magic around saying we have a forecast, we have product inbound. What is our goal and objective from a fulfillment perspective? Oftentimes from an e-commerce perspective, we really need to have product available immediately, or we miss an opportunity for sale, just from the standpoint that our customers have options. So service level is all about saying, what is my willingness to be out of stock? I like thinking about it in the other terms. It's oftentimes become very real when we're out of stock on a product. And then lastly, in here, we have a lot of data available within the system to begin doing some analysis. So we can identify where to position product. Maybe there's product available in another location within our distribution network. So all of this information is facilitated by pulling this information in from the ERP and then doing further analysis for operational type planning. So with that, Sarah, I'll pass the ball over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeffrey. In even doing this webinar and now, hearing about Stock IQ and what they can offer when it comes to inventory data made me really, really excited to speak specifically to people using commerce, because I think this adds another layer of important data that makes you a really, really good competitor when it comes to the space right now. So as you can tell, right, the real-time inventory data is going to be something that we're both pulling from the ERP. We are more on I would say the external portion, right? This is the customer facing, whereas Stock IQ is going to be something that your internal teams can be looking at. But the reason why it's important, right, not just looking at your ERP when you're utilizing, let's say, a marketplace, your social media, your POS, your website, your everything, is you need better understanding of that data to then utilize that front-facing e-commerce store to the best visibility. So what I mean by that is, let's say I want to do forecasting, right, for a certain type of inventory. I want to look at their product ranks. I can actually see with Stock IQ which omnichannel is selling which product the most efficiently, or like whether or not those customers are even reacting to it. So if I am running an e-commerce store as part of the omnichannel experience and I see that product A is selling the most on the Home Depot distribution, I'm going to look at that and go, okay, how can I move inventory products B and C on my web store in a more efficient way to help move that inventory? Because you want to have as low inventory as you want on hand. So I can create, email campaigns around promoting products B and C. I can make even just like a loyalty program around customers that might be reacting back to that. The best way to utilize your e-commerce platform is analyzing your inventory data and then taking that customer data and pushing it through the front. So for instance, even like your website, when it comes to cross-selling and upselling, right? Whether which customer is being logged into that e-commerce site, you can take a look at your inventory stats and figure out, okay, which distribution is selling where, right? How can I improve that efficiency of, just customer fulfillment on both ends? So I think it's really, really important to, have an e-commerce platform like DynamicWeb that's completely integrated to the ERP. But then being past the integration, you need data to really scale it, right? And at this point in time, algorithms and data are so important. And I know, people keep saying, are algorithms or AI going to take our jobs? I say, no, not yet. But the human that knows how to use that tech before you is. So it's really, really, really important to understand how to utilize both these solutions in tangent, because data is going to be king in as we're, the pandemic taught us so much, right, Jeffrey? I'm sure the amount of supply chain conversations you had, and maybe I want to ask you this question: if people had Stock IQ during that bottleneck, do you think they could have, managed the waters better?
Great question. So I'll respond to your first one, which was the pandemic has taught us a lot. And what it taught us a lot is we didn't have the status quo anymore, right? All of a sudden, demand changed drastically. Our supply chain of fulfillment changed drastically. So we were left with, what do we do moving forward? And I can share the experience from working with our clients that they all of a sudden began developing these processes like the sales and operations or integrated business planning, because all of a sudden they had a supply chain that had a pipeline of inventory that was either coming in or not coming in. And they either had customers who were buying or not buying. And oftentimes that insight that came from the account management, those other entities, those data analytics were so very, very critical. So I saw a tremendous number of our clients actually come on board and start analyzing data in a very, very discreet way, because they didn't have any insight as to what was going on. So they were relying on almost this real-time information to begin making changes. Just another comment on that. So sales and operations planning has historically been a monthly process where beginning of the month, we do our data analytics, we analyze it, we bring it, we identify where the potential issues are. We then ultimately culminate that in an executive meeting that only lasts 1 hour. And that's the cycle. So during this 1 hour meeting, we make these critical decisions on whether we invest, divest of inventory. Do we need to look at alternate sourcing? So there's some really critical decisions that are making inside this process. Mind you, this is typically once per month. During the pandemic, with the volatility that was going on, we saw clients that were coming together on a daily basis and starting these S&OP formal processes weekly. I even saw a couple scenarios where they were doing them twice weekly. But what was driving it was the data and the analytics coming from the marketplace. A lot of folks were having a really hard time believing that their demand was continuing to move up. So we saw two types of things. There was the COVID bump or the COVID slump. The COVID bump, people were skeptical, meaning they were going, I can't believe my sales are going up 30, 40, 50, 60%. And there were just this constant questioning. But what it drove is it drove the organization to come together, analyze that information and the trending, and then they started executing on the back end on it. So yeah, a tremendous amount of data analytics coming in. And the people that are skilled at that are invaluable. So AI's out there, data analytics, I would say that's probably one of the biggest trends. Yeah, you hit right on the top of it. Hit the nail on the head on that one, Sarah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even from like the e-commerce standpoint too, we had clients that, let's say, because they had an e-commerce store, they were having an uptick in those sales, right? Especially when everything closed down, people wanted to order online, but then they had a completely broken experience because their e-commerce stores weren't properly integrated to the ERP. So they didn't even know what they had on hand at some point. And how are you going to have proper like revenue logistics if you're not understanding, like the basis of your company is moving inventory. That's how you make money. But if you don't have a track of that, on whenever you're selling, whatever omnichannel you're selling, you're not utilizing the software that you spent so much money on to the best of its ability, right? So finding inventory data, integration is going to be key, right?
Great. Great. Anything else you wanted to share on this one, Sarah?
No, I think we're good for the next one.
All righty, let's move forward here. So let's talk about the foundational and the advanced when we talk about e-commerce and the ERP and the integration component. So certainly foundational, we've talked a lot about this, is sales orders and inventory. That is a critical component for us. When it gets down to customer records, I would tell you from Stock IQ's perspective, not quite as important from the standpoint that we're looking maybe across a lot of different customers, especially in a B2B type world. But Sarah, do you have some insight as it relates to customer records?
Yeah, of course. So customer records is really important. I would say, even on the customer facing, right? So, when you have a customer records and you're doing like your internal processing, you need to have an understanding of that workflow, where those invoices are going. But like, let's say I am your customer looking, to buy from you. And I'm looking at a couple of different, manufacturers and, suppliers. If I don't have a login and I can't view my own customer record history and I can't understand, okay, when's the next order going to come through? Has it been fulfilled? If I don't have that real-time data, I'm going to look for someone else to purchase from. And I've even talked with people like, well, we don't do that, but, we're selling our products for a lower price. I go, well, at some point, and I mean, even me personally, when I do this, is you have to understand what your customer is doing too, right? So let's say you think, oh, the value of underselling your pricing, right, is going to keep me there without, a proper customer record. Well, I would say all of my competitors are utilizing the most high-end, automation platforms as possible. And I don't have time. I can't lose money where there's no automation. So although there is going to be a higher price tag, I'm going to choose that convenience. Who's utilizing, Stock IQ and DynamicWeb software, and I'm just going to absorb the cost and put it back into my end product because I need customer records. You guys need customer records. You can't be doing spreadsheets anymore. It's been working for how many years, but we're at the point, and I think going back to our previous conversation, is you need to look at the psychology of what consumers are doing right now. You're not an Amazon. You're not selling direct to consumer. But those people buying from you have that expectation already. So if you can't offer that to them, they're going to go on to the next person that can, right?
Yeah, obviously. You want to speak to some of the advanced components of e-commerce and ERP integration?
Yeah. So, quotes is something that, companies might say it's easy to take from an email or just like a form, but that's another part of the automation process that can be easily integrated into the ERP, and that can be utilized through a quote portal, right? There's no need to delegate labor time to be doing these processes when you can just have a really simple integration to put it there. So whether that's invoice management, your customers want to have flexible payment methods at this point. There's so many different types of, doing those types of pricing. A lot of people are, I'm sure you've seen it too with your platform, is people like subscription paying now too. Like those are all very important. Yes, maybe you're not a SaaS software company, but subscription model is becoming more and more popular, and you need to help adhere to that. And then also, warranty claims, CPQ is really, really important, especially if you're a company selling really highly customizable quotes. That's going to be really important if you want to offer that B2B e-commerce experience, like you're not just a traditional e-commerce. And then, overall business logic and fringe cases that requires a customization that a simple e-commerce platform cannot offer you. You need to work with someone on that. And, DynamicWeb does have the capability. We are based on API framework. You can add, whatever type of business case you might have, we can adhere to that.
Yeah. Sarah, you hit on something right at the beginning here, and I think it's permeating the buying experience, is Amazon has shaped the expectation of the consumer these days. It's fast, it's immediate, it's available, and I move on if I don't have that type of convenience. Really, they have really set a high bar for us, and it happened very, very quickly.
Yeah. And what just came to mind too is, not just the usability of the Amazon, but like you said, the order fulfillment stuff. Both of our platforms are able to create that instant order fulfillment on the same level. And you said you work with, 3PLs, 4PLs, like just getting shipping down to a reasonable amount. Like you're not just competing on the user experience anymore, you're competing on the entire supply chain. And, I heard a talk one time, Amazon isn't a marketplace, it's a logistics company. That's what you're competing against. And although, oh, well, I'm in manufacturing, like Amazon is, for your direct to consumer, I have seen a lot of, especially like VC funded companies start investing in creating mini Amazons within every vertical niche. So it's creeping up on you in any way, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the bottom of this, there's a consumer expectation that this is how everybody should operate. So again, yeah, there's opportunities for us out in here. There's also an opportunity for us to become not relevant in the market as well. So, which is why we come forward here talking about some leading practice. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate that. And I think you have some examples here for us as well.
Yeah. So like I said, depending on, what kind of company you guys are, there are, I would say, a lot of positives to even offering, a B2C experience on your website. But if you look at this example up at the top, there's also the B2B login. So, we worked with clients that they have B2B needs, and then they think they need to go to, a separate e-commerce platform to get that B2C. It's easier just to do it all in one, have multiple interfaces. You can connect a lot of different types of customers into one store. And that way, if it's all in this one platform, you guys, Stock IQ, can take the logistics and inventory data from all of those channels and place it into one forecasting. Because, depending on kind of like the logistics of your company, utilizing supply chain logistics is going to be, a case by case basis, depending on what you're selling for sure.
Great.
And this is also, an interesting vertical to wine distribution, right? Because something that really resonated with me with Stock IQ is understanding, the customer data and buyer habits. When it comes to wine distribution, you could have, loyalty programs or subscription payments to customers. And let's say, they put something in their shopping cart, but they end up, not purchasing it. You can take that data and say, okay, well, if it's not being sold right by the specific consumer here, let's look at Stock IQ, let's forecast it and figure out how can we take that product and sell it maybe on a different omnichannel platform. Or just getting that real-time data of where everything's at. Like if you don't know where the inventory is, you can't sell it. And then that's going to affect the health of your business, right? So, have you guys seen any specific use cases? I know the wine vertical is a lot different sometimes, even from just a stocking and supply chain basis.
So we have seen this experience with folks, and given the omni-channel experience, one of the things as you noted out in here, really identifying where the movement was and where it isn't is equally as important from the standpoint that we can reposition in different channels to meet that demand. And you keep hitting on this, Sarah, and one of the underpinnings of a profitable business is matching our customer expectations with the lowest amount of inventory possible. We keep talking about low amounts of inventory. We're not talking about not meeting our service objectives, but what we're talking about is saying, what can we do to meet a customer expectation, our internal expectations, with the very lowest amount of inventory? Inventory is carried on the books as an asset. I think it should be carried as a liability, because if we're not selling it, huge amounts of costs associated with bringing that inventory in, carrying it. In fact, oftentimes we're seeing anywhere from a 25 to 35% annual holding cost associated with inventory, taxes you're paying on this. We can't afford to have our inventory not moving through the channel. As you mentioned a little bit earlier, it's really about us moving our product out into the marketplace. So we can gain insights as to how things are selling, in each individual channel, reposition product. Yeah, so I think the combination of the two can really assist you in better moving that product through your facilities.
For sure.
Yeah. Anything else you wanted to share here, Sarah?
I think when it comes to inventory levels and seeing that, kind of emphasizing the importance of why that matters to the customer too. So for instance, right, like real-time inventory data being reflected onto that e-commerce store is going to be really important for your end consumer, because if you're selling B2B, and depending on, you know, the company, let's say you are you make screws and nails, you manufacture them. So the people that are buying your product have their own manufacturing timelines that they have to fulfill. If I make cars, right, with those parts, I need to understand when is your inventory going to be available, because I have my own calendar date of when I can create and manufacture those products too. So if, like I said previously, if those customers are competing against other, you know, companies that are having the most streamlined supply chain process, they need to be 100% transparent with you guys of when. I don't want to wait for, you know, a random email notice of when the inventory is going to be given to me, because that affects the rest of my operations. So utilizing both your guys' forecasting and the real-time data of inventory is not just a benefit for your internal company process, but it's going to make you be more appealing to those end users.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. All righty. Well, we'll keep moving forward here, and I'll dive into a little bit of the back end and talk a little bit about Stock IQ. So when we talk about Stock IQ, I actually have I'm going to actually be sharing with you some software, because I really wanted to highlight about this omni-channel. So what does an omni-channel mean? And I'm going to be diving into the application here. So this is the Stock IQ homepage. You'll notice that there are some metrics on here for helping us understand movement, how we're filling our customers, like service level over time. But let's start over here with forecasting, and let's talk about forecasting as kind of the basis for understanding where we should position product based on where our customers' expectations are. So one of the things that you will notice in here, you have to forgive me for just one moment here. Okay, I'm doing my best not to sneeze. Forgive me here. So one of the things that I'd like to highlight here when we start talking about this omni-channel, and I'll do my best to set this up in here, you will notice that I have a SKU over here called 1003. You will also notice that I have a site location with it. The site location is associated with where I'm stocking that product. But lastly, you will notice that I also have another identifier, which is called customer grouping. Customer grouping is that omni-channel. So what we're talking about here is I am selling this SKU 003 to both my tier 2 customers and my Sam's Club. You will notice down here, I have an entity that's selling into Costco, one selling into Home Depot, obviously very different demand patterns. So when we talk about an omni-channel process, we're also talking about the ability to forecast this individual SKU at the individual channel level. And this can become very important because I might be doing promotions in one channel, but not another. They may have a very different run rate. So part of this in an omni-channel arena is being able to forecast all the way down to an individual customer level. So what we're looking at in here, and we'll talk about some of the data that we source from the ERP system, it's really about going out and saying, what have we historically sold to this channel from this SKU in this particular location? And Sarah, you brought this up a little bit earlier about positioning inventory correctly. I may have a product that sells really, really well in the Southeast. Northeast, marginal sales on it. Well, maybe we boost the performance, boost the promotions in the Northeast to see if we can catch up with it. But in the meantime, I need to understand where I'm going to be carrying that inventory to match those requirements from that promotion aspect. So what this gives us the ability to do is, even across multiple regions, multiple stocking locations, multiple channels, I can understand where my sales are going to be moving. So this all starts with pulling in that data from the ERP system, which is all my sales transactions. Sales transactions gives me insight into when I've sold, how much I've sold. We also have access to the on-hand balance. If I'm stocked out at any point in time during here, expectations are I was likely missing some revenue opportunities. So analyzing this data at a very granular level at an omni-channel level gives me the ability to do a better job of forecasting. The next thing that we're doing with this data is we're going to be analyzing it for the trends. Are the demands going up in this channel? Are they going down? Do we have a seasonal profile associated with this, which is, hey, there's certain times of the year that these products are selling better in this channel than in others. So this seasonality gets combined with this overall trend, and we now have a forecast of demand moving forward. Now, in this forecast, this dotted line represents today. Everything to the left is history. Everything to the right is a forward-looking view of where we think we're going to be going. Now, part of the reason that we're showing this long forecast out in here is oftentimes we're looking at 90, 120, 150, 180 days for fulfillment coming in from a supply chain perspective. So, sir, as I'm working in your world at this point, operationally, I need to understand what my omni-channel promotions are going to be doing. Going, hey, maybe we have some demands out in here, 4 months from now. We need to start planning that very, very early. And what we can do is we can incorporate this information from the promotion. We call these events. Essentially, what they're doing is they're helping us understand what we think we're going to be doing from a planning perspective. So maybe we have a first page promotion, right, that we're starting to move this product up in this channel. And we think that this demand can go up by, let's actually select a date in here. Let's say we're going to run this for the March time period. We think demand can increase by 45% based on that promotion. So what this gives us the ability to do is all of a sudden, I can bring in this external facing information and saying, hey, we've got some promotions that are going on out in here. Let's incorporate them into the demand. We can now begin planning for this specific channel, right? So I can plan directly for that. This information also gives me the ability to incorporate my goals and objective from a service perspective. So my goal and objective in this channel, in the Sam's Club, knowing that I need to make sure that I'm fulfilling all of that product, I have a high expectation of my service. So a service level is essentially correlating to fill rate, which is how much of the time do I want to have that product available? The higher the service level, the more inventory we're going to obviously have to carry to support that. So what we're doing in this is we are sizing that inventory appropriate with that channel, appropriate with the service objective that we're doing, and we will develop an inventory profile for that product. So for this product, it was an A-based product. I want a 99% fill rate. I need to position this much inventory to be able to meet that need. So given the focus in on the market, that specific channel, knowing there's promotions, I can all of a sudden make a replenishment plan that's directly associated with that insight coming from that individual channel that's tied into my goals and objectives. So this is one of the really important things that gets into planning this omni-channel fulfillment. Now, I may not have that same demand plan over here with this channel, but maybe it's a little bit different run rate that we're moving through on there. So really important, when we're planning this omni-channel, to get very discreet on how we move forward. So we also talked about, from an inventory planning perspective, when we talked about stratification. Stratification is all about evaluating how well items are moving in each individual channel. One of the things that you will notice in here is I have a matrix called ABC XYZ. This can inform me, one, on what do I want my products positioned. So for instance, out in here, my A items and the recurring demand, I can't be out of stock on these. The good news is I know where they rank based on my analysis of them. So I can go through here and analyze all. This is part of that data analytics. I can look at each individual SKU, each individual channel. I can understand what their overall policy is. I can understand whether this is sporadic demand, recurring demand. So as we're getting into analyzing this information, I leverage the data in my ERP system, coming from the e-commerce platform, understanding how many hits I've had, how many times do customers order this, when they order it, what's their overall quantity that they're ordering. So going through and analyzing this information gives me a lot of insight as to where to position this product. You will notice that we're also doing this by individual SKU. So my stocking location and that individual item that's out there. So very, very important for us when it comes to analyzing an omni-channel environment, getting directly at what's feeding it, what we're promoting and moving forward. So, yeah. So with that being said, I wasn't sure if there was anything else in here you felt important that you think we should begin highlighting here, Sarah, but I'd be happy to highlight that if you feel necessary.
Yeah, just one quick question. Can you, when it comes to these rankings, and is there a geolocation? Like, can you see kind of like from a physical location standpoint where these are being sold?
Yeah, great question. So we
Okay.
do have the ability to see that. We don't have it mapped out yet, but one of the things that we do in our forecasting is we have the ability to begin looking at the customers that are buying in the ship to locations. So that gives us some insight as to where our customers are coming. So let's look at a product family, for instance. Let me look at my cell phone accessories. I am now looking at this entire product family across all these different against all of these different regions and locations, and I can understand where the customers are and where they're shipped to. So we have ship to information directly. By the way, I'll pop up this demand here so we can see this. You can see I have Home Depot in here, and I have the various ship tos associated with it. So yes, we do have that ship to information. I can also understand what the demand is in that particular location. So
Okay, great.
yeah.
Yeah, that information is really great for your e-commerce store because the more data you have on your customers buying and even just like the physical location of it, right? You can not only just do like loyalty programs for like specific customers, but rather like the way that you advertise your company and where you're spending
Mhm.
your ads to even just even having like proper information on your website of how to get locked into a type of geo targeting on Google. Like for instance, if I'm in South Carolina and I'm looking for, the closest type of manufacturer for steel parts, you want to make sure that those products that are selling really good in that area are being exposed to those people looking for you.
Yeah, yeah, great point there. I'm going to wrap this up here pretty quickly, but we noticed a little bit earlier that we were looking at a particular demand profile. Let's follow that up on the replenishment. So we have promotions, we have seasonality. Stock IQ will establish how much stock we should be maintaining on each one of those individual items. Again, based on these insights and these trends, we're also going to generate the requisite replenishment. Now, the requisite replenishment might be coming from another distribution facility. It might be coming directly from a vendor. So with all of this information being the demand plan as the foundation, meaning what do I think I'm going to be selling in this particular channel? What do I have on hand? This is information coming from the ERP system. When do I need to generate replenishments out on the horizon to make sure that my inventory levels are being maintained directly in correspondence with my direct service objective that I'm trying to meet with this channel? So, all righty. I can see that we've got about 10 minutes left here, Sarah. So I'm going to move forward here and let's talk about ROI.
Yeah, for sure.
All righty.
So, e-commerce and increasing revenue. So there have been, instances where, I'm speaking to potential customers and they're like, yeah, we have an e-commerce website, it doesn't do anything. I was like, okay, are you, utilizing, the marketing? Are you amplifying your SEO? Are you interacting with your customers? Are you having them adopt it? And they're like, no. And I was like, okay. So, the first step is having an e-commerce, but then how do you actually get ROI out of it is the really important step that, people need to start looking at. So for instance, the easiest thing right off the bat is better and more convenient buying processes. We've already discussed a lot about that previously. But when it comes to the ability of 24/7 automated sales, I think this is a really crazy attribute to this, right? Because prior to the internet, if you're selling, right, just with the people in your office, it's a 9 to 5, it's one location. You are limited to the hours of your time zone. But if you have the capability of making it 24/7 automated sales, back in the 80s, if you wanted to sell internationally, you had to have like offshore bases to receive those demands and take those calls. If you have a standstill store that isn't required people to pick up the phone, you can start selling internationally. If your company is looking to scale like that, that's an access that your company definitely would not have had access to previously. And it's able to be expanded with that e-commerce. So kind of really understanding the importance of having that, right? I know, going back to the psychology of the consumer, I'm not just working a 9 to 5 as a company anymore. I'll be at 10 o'clock at night being like, oh, great, I need to source this one ingredient from, Europe, right? I can just like go on and sell it. I don't have to wait until 2 in the morning my time to try and call and get that specialty item. Another really great instant ROI I saw with a company was, a mid-market company that's been around in the family for generations. They wanted to start selling internationally, so they just started putting up their stuff on their store. They started selling their product in I don't even know what country, somewhere in East Europe, and it was crazy because it's like they went from being a local manufacturer in the Midwest to instantly being internationally selling just by giving that automated sales process. So going to the third option, expand online visibility and sales reach, when people are looking like myself for more ingredient manufacturers, how are we going to find you? Like, I'll go to trade shows actually, and there'll be legacy companies there having amazing products. And I go up to them, in my tons of research, I could not find you. So at the time, I had already gone with one of their competitors, but if they were visible online, I would have 100% gone with them first. So it's really important to stay competitive like that. And when you go into even increasing order value, right? So utilizing that Stock IQ data of the ABC product ranking and being able to say, okay, product B is selling really great on your DynamicWeb e-commerce. Let's figure out how to cross-sell, upsell that to other customers. So data is going to be king with all of this. Understanding your consumer habits is going to leverage your inventory quickly as possible. And then what's really great too is, you guys touched upon, you guys do a type of, promotion programs, right? And loyalty programs. This is something that's so crucial to people. If they're in a loyalty program, let's say they get a certain percentage discount off each time, that's going to keep your customer retention above the board. And at this point, when everyone is increasing their digital transformation and it's becoming more and more competitive, customer retention is at the very high of your priority because you can lose them in a second, right? And then, automate customer onboarding. My expected experience now in working with a manufacturer is I want to create a login, I want to see my customer history, and I want to have a really good support when I need it. So just offering that customer onboarding experience is going to be really important for not only just like piquing people's interest, but also being like, okay, I actually might want to work with them. That's important. And the fact of the matter is 95% of purchases are going to be online by 2040. And the pandemic taught us so much. Even I live in New York City, the amount of people using like Seamless, Grubhub, buying just like their groceries online, right? That's the expectation now. And people want everything with just one click, right? So if something's been working for like 40 years, like I've been talking with a lot of the manufacturing vertical, right? Because you have these legacy negotiation with companies that, you have such great relations with, you don't need to onboard them to online, right? But it just takes one new person at that company in a role to say, what we're using is legacy dinosaur software. We need to upgrade now. So you can't count on people wanting to stay stagnant with that type of buying process forever. We're coming up at that point in time. It's going to be crucial. And, monitoring the trends, right? The trend started prior to the pandemic. The pandemic then emphasized the digital era. And now we're at the point where it's like, if you don't adopt, you're going to be left behind. And then finally, right, planning inventory to align with growth. And you can definitely speak a lot on this, Jeffrey, is understanding that sweet spot of how much inventory needs to be consistently moving and how much you actually need to stay on hand. Because like you said, keeping inventory is not an asset because, then you don't have cash on hand. It's going to be stuck in that inventory. You need to move it. You don't actually have value and revenue to the company unless you're moving that inventory. So
yeah, exactly. So, and that's a big deal for us, making sure that we're efficiently managing that. So our ROI, automated sales order processing, I'll let you quickly go down through here. I'll hit on my components on it. Efficiently, inventory insights, where are we selling, who's selling, what are the volumes moving through there. I'll also speak to the inventory aligned to sales trends. So very, very critical, meaning we're doing promotions, we have an uptick in sales. I can't rely on my last 6 months worth of data or last 12 months and look at averages. I need to be looking at that overall trend given the long lead time associated with that. So tremendous amount of opportunity out in here to increase ROI, but we need to be aligned with it from an inventory perspective.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else you'd like to highlight over here, Sarah?
Reducing errors caused by manual processes for sure. Like I said, we're at the point where we're going to be competing with algorithms and AI, and your company cannot afford to waste labor, clock time on, inputting an order wrong. Like that's such a simple thing that doesn't need to be, extracted time wise. And if you get that order wrong, like how much money and time are you losing if you're trying to be as, as efficient as a company as possible? Like there's no we're at a point, especially now, right? If you're looking at, the overall economic picture, is we can't afford to make errors with just simple order processing. We can't afford to make errors when it comes to not knowing where inventory is and how to forecast it. Like that number of how much inventory we need to have on hand to get through the season, that number can't be arbitrary anymore, because your competitors aren't guessing anymore. So you can't either.
Correct. Yeah. A whole different expectation set in the marketplace these days, and there's an opportunity for us to meet those requirements. But again, it still takes quite a while to manufacture product and position it in the right location. So we need to be forward thinking. When you were talking about order entry errors, I can't tell you how many times those order entry errors are not found until after product is in the pipeline. So we'll go back and we'll analyze history, and you'll start seeing these spikes, and we responded to those spikes with a purchase, and you go back and you look and there's an extra zero added to an inventory item. Yeah, that's it's very, very difficult to recover from things like that, especially if we already have product on order. So, and it's not necessary. So I think at this point, there's an opportunity to leverage the technologies. I love the way DynamicWeb is enabling companies to meet with the expectations in the marketplace, because truly expectations have changed. It's changed with my mom who buys online. It's changed with, all generations, and certainly the new generations of buyers coming into the market. There is flat out an expectation on how product is available. So yeah, absolutely. Just wanted to share. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing insight into DynamicWeb from an omni-channel perspective. It's also been my pleasure to visit with everybody out here, kind of share with how on the back end, we as an organization need to be aligned to meet the demands of the consumer ultimately that are going through these processes of purchasing online, and making sure that we operationally can be very efficient in monitoring those trends, looking at the point of sale, getting in those promotions so that our inventory is aligned to meet the expectation of the customer at the end of the day. ROI comes from us, from making sure that we've met the fulfillment rates that our goal and objectives are set to, the inventory is positioned, and we're ready to meet the market's demands operationally, even given these long lead times. So with that, again, thank you so very much. You can see contact information should you want to reach out to either Sarah or myself. These are our direct contact information, phone numbers here. We'd be happy to share with you any of our insights that we've gained out over here over the last, I'll say, quite a few years for me, and the changes going forward. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure, Sarah. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. And thank you guys for today. I don't know, do we have any time if anyone wanted to ask any questions?
We'll certainly hang around and available if people do have questions. And I don't see any questions at this point. I think we ran people right up to the hour. So we'd rely on people to send us a note. Thank you so very much again, and have a wonderful day.